Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researcher Celebrity. Today we have Mr. Austin Mejia with us as our researcher celebrity. A brief introduction about Austin. He has done his bachelor's in biology from University of Houston and master's in entomology from Penn State University. Currently, Austin is a second year PhD student at the Colorado State University. With this brief introduction, I would like to welcome Austin at the platform. Austin, thank you.
Thank you so much for having invited me for this. This is going to be real fun.
So we always start our conversation that how and when you decided that you want to become a researcher in life.
Yeah, so I didn't even know about research till my undergrad, until my senior year of undergrad. Where I grew up, there was no, we grew up in a kind of a rough neighborhood, and it wasn't a topic of discussion about being a researcher. Um, it wasn't until my senior year when I started doing a lab for microbiology, the graduate student. Um, he was real funny and he was real smart. And I asked him, "Hey, can I join your lab?" Because he was asking us about how some of the research he was doing. And then from there, I kind of joined that lab. So it was in a year, I got the experience of having to join a lab and trying to figure out, do I want to do this? So I was enjoying all that work. It was in an ecology lab. And then one time I was in class for my evolution class, and I love evolution. And there was one slide that talked about this bacteria called Wolbachia. I was so interested. I started immediately after class. I started reading papers. I started looking in labs, and in a couple of weeks, I was contacting professors. And then from there, that's how I jumped into my master's and knew I was gonna wanting to do research.
Okay, so seems like you were amazed, like as we say sometimes that love at first sight. Just
Yeah.
first day or a first year in the research, and you're like, okay, now this is what I want to do. Okay,
Yep.
so this was the transition from bachelor's to master's. Okay,
Hmm.
and then you enjoyed doing your research at Penn State University.
Yep.
Then, how was that experience based on which you finally decided to join as a PhD at the Colorado State University?
Yeah. So, I always tell people, if you're gonna do a PhD, you gotta make sure you're doing it for a reason. You're not just doing it because you want to continue education. It's a big commitment. It's difficult. It's not easy. So you've got to make sure that this is something you really need. And for my case, the type of jobs I want in the future required a minimum of a PhD. And I was at the same time, I need this, but at the same time, I was like, I'm really enjoying this type of research and I want to get into this more. Um, and yeah, my PI, when I was trying to graduate, she suggested some labs and I started looking into it. And funny enough, the lab that I joined a couple of months before I graduated, that PI I have right now did a presentation at Penn State. And from then on, yeah, jumped into the lab and I knew that this is the lab that I wanted to be in.
So, this is how we always say that for all the young enthusiasts, scientific meetings like international or national are the place where you might end up discussing your ideas or your interest with your future PIs. But here, what Austin also mentioned is like, even if you have those invited talks or speakers in your university, in your department, try to engage as much as you can because that's how Austin met his PhD supervisor. And who knows that if you're looking forward to something like him also. So, Austin, by the time of master's, you might have had a decent amount of taste of research.
Hmm.
So you knew that what you are signing up. We appreciate the thorough vision, as you mentioned, that the kind of job you want to do in future, PhD is one of those requirements. So you know that why you are doing this. What we have seen in not like in very rare cases that people either pursue their, and this is all around the world, that either it is for, so it is not driven by passion for research, but various other reasons. Either it is responsibilities or whatever. So when you start your PhD by already thinking of the end goal that, okay, I want to secure this job, PhD is the requirement. So I will checklist that by saying, okay, I have done it. Now I'm ready for this job. thinking like, in a different direction. When you were making up your mind that, okay, where should I join PhD? So let's start with that thought. When you decided that, okay, now you are committed in your head that you are going to do a PhD, what were the points, or if you can share this with all the audience that who are thinking to join labs for their PhD, what are the key points they should consider?
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. When I joined Penn State, I was a direct hire. For my PhD, I rotated. So different experiences. When I did my master's, when people do, sometimes you get unlucky when you just do that direct hire because sometimes a lot of people tell you to, if you love the research, you'll be able to outweigh everything and just live off the research, and that's how you're going to survive the PhD. But that's not that great of an idea because if you join a lab that's really, really bad and kind of toxic, it's you might come out of it, but you might come out of a different person, or you might not even come out of it. And I've seen people not come out of it because they didn't like the lab. Um, Doing a rotation is amazing if you have the option to have a rotation. For me, the big thing about science is that it's collaborative. That's the big thing about science. Our science is about networking and talking to people, making everything feel like a big family. It's not just about results. So for me to join a lab, and I've been lucky that all the labs that I've joined, they felt like family. I felt that I was able to talk about anything, talk about my results, talk about anything that was going on in my work or personal life, and people were there for you. So that was one of my big things, making sure that this lab, everybody felt united, everybody felt like they were helping each other become a better person. Um, and then at the same time, I was lucky that this is the type of research I kind of was looking for. So it was that was that mix perfectly. And I was like, yeah, after my second rotation, after my third rotation, I was like, I went back to my the second rotation. I was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna, because normally they were asking me to do four, and I was like, no, I'm sure that this is the lab I want to go into. So yeah, that was my way to get jump into a lab.
Oh, absolutely. And this is something which I'll share with all the audience around the world. So sometimes you join the institute, and this depends country to country and also institution to institution. You might or might not have this option of rotation, as Austin mentioned. So direct hires is like you contact a professor, they say that they are ready to have you as a PhD student, and you join the lab, and then there is no other way that you can move out of that lab, and then you have to complete that lab PhD in the lab, or leave the entire research in there, and then you do that. The option which Austin shared about rotation, so in some of the institutes and universities, this is the possibility that depending on, again, on universities, so you might have to undergo two, three, or four rotations where you spend some time in the lab, where this gives you the perfect opportunity. You can talk to your supervisor at that time. You can talk to everyone in the lab and then ensure that is this the environment you are looking for? Because the minimum commitment, let's say 3 to 5 years, you're going to spend with that group. Yes, people will come, people will leave, but most of the culture will be the same. In some of the labs, it is more of everyone is working in their own silos, not talking to each other. But again, as Austin mentioned, that he was looking for somewhere he can get collaborative environment, united, where he can have a very friendly environment where he can share his research as well as his personal, because at the end of the day, we all are humans.
Mhm.
We are going through happiness, sometimes most from the family backgrounds or whatnot, and a lot of stress. Yes, which is the what we say the truth of most of the PhDs, but the results are always fulfilling, accomplishing, and that's
Yeah.
why we are doing this.
Mhm.
So, Austin, now you have almost spent more than 700 days in there. Second year, okay, 2 years. How was the journey till now? And then from here, where we will go?
The journey in this 2 years, I think it's the good thing about having a master's is the master's is like a very small PhD without the preliminary exams and just a smaller thesis at the end of it. So I kind of knew what I was getting into it. So a lot of the stuff I knew that was gonna happen. The harder parts have been, and this has always happened throughout all my journey, and it's a big thing that you gotta learn, as a scientist, is failure will happen. Even though that you try to predict everything and you think you're perfect at something, failure might happen. And that just hurts you so bad. Um, so for my master's, I was really good at doing qPCR. One of the first things I started to do in the lab, it was not working. I did that for my entire master's and it was not working. I was just mad at myself and disappointed at myself because I was like, I know this technique. Why is none of this working? So it was a lot of trial and error and I figured it out. And then that's still happening with now I'm doing a different technique and I kind of know it and it's kind of the same things happening. And it's that I think has been the harder part right now so far for me. The part of you're trying to make all these results, and at the same time, I'm being hard on myself because I don't want to disappoint my PI. I want to be able to give her results and everything like that. But yeah, I think trying to overcome that failure or that the moments where your work is just not working, I think that has been the hardest part. But other than that, I've enjoyed it. Enjoyed networking. I love giving presentations. So we give you a lot of opportunities to do that. And yeah, it's been a community where it's exactly what I expected. It was a it this the vector people at CSU are very much, this is not just one lab trying to compete each other for money or grants or ideas. We want all the PIs to work together to build off their knowledge to make a bigger grant. So sometimes multiple PIs are on grants with each other. So that experience has been really amazing.
Absolutely. And this is something which we also talk about, that failure will happen. That is for sure. Hypothesis often fails. So now, if you are so strict and adamant about the hypothesis, and if you are not open, and this brings us to another point, like when we say that you should approach a research question with an open-minded thing. Yes, to start with, you have to have an hypothesis, but you should be open for the outcomes, that either this or that. And most of the times, the negative results actually opens a new avenue for the lab, for the institute, for the world. Just seeing, there are so many examples in the research history when something was discovered, people haven't acknowledged it well enough. But just because someone has utilized it as a tool for something else, and then now the entire world want to do the same thing, which was there in the basket for a couple of years and in sometimes decades. The second thing, troubleshooting. This brings the most important tool of any PhD is troubleshooting. If you have done your PhD without troubleshooting, it might be a piece of paper. Yes, you have done everything, but the most important skill set which you should have had in your box was troubleshooting, and you missed it. Austin, let's talk about troubleshooting. You mentioned that failure happens. Yes. How to approach all those failed experiments, because all the audience who are listening to you in United States and abroad, let's hear from a second year PhD student that how they should approach a failed experiment.
Um, I think the first way is a lot of this stuff is the emotional part because if you emotionally are like, this is not working, you kind of give up. That first mentality has to be the big thing of I can change this and I can do this. But the way that you were talking about how kind of like this culture is changing, or how important it is that failure should be talked about more. One of the big things up in Colorado, or at least for our group, is talking about failure. We've had PIs do an entire presentations where they just talk about failure throughout their life, where they haven't been able to get grants and they just keep failing and stuff hasn't been working. That gives you that idea, the graduate student, that it's okay, it's gonna happen. Like I said, I'm also in a lab that's really helpful. I'm like, okay, let me talk in a meeting. I tried this didn't work. And people are like, have you tried that? Have you tried this? And I think having that area that you feel safe that you can ask these questions, that's kind of for me the way that you troubleshoot. It's also that, and then you try to mix that with trying to be like, let me look at scientific papers. trying to find out what kind of the stuff that they're doing. Maybe if I switch to what they're doing or try to copy or take some parts of it into my project, it'll work out. So it's a mix of both things of being trying to ask people have they done something similar and trying to work with other prior research from other art papers.
Yeah, and this is like something where the environment comes again and again. This will come in the conversation that your research group you are working, either it is a small lab or a bigger lab, or the department itself, should be the safe place for you, where you can go and express all the failures you have faced. You should not be changing because what has been seen in the recent past that either because of the performance pressure or because of the peer pressure. And this is unstoppable debate that from where upside down, downside up, how it goes. But sometimes what has been seen is that people starting making the data according to the expected outcome. So, yes, they were supposed to happen like that, but that's not how it is working. And in biological systems, what we know is like whatever we are thinking might not be the real case. The reality might be different, and you should be open for it. The moment you are trying to manipulate the data according to your customized needs, you are killing a researcher in you, you are fooling the entire society, and you are putting so many research at the risk because they might follow your paper. They might like they and that's how all the citations comes from. So if you are following someone, you are giving them citations. And then now if you are not true with your data while publishing, it might get published. It might get a lot citation. But when a new researcher at the desk is following your paper, because except you, nobody knows that it is not the real data. Those people will spend their resources, their time, and what will they get is the frustration,
Mhm.
which is the worst part. You are looking to contribute to the field. Researchers should be pure at heart. That is first thing. And that is we can say as a human being, you have these moral responsibilities, and that's why we talk about ethics in research now. Just because we have seen paper retraction because of n number things. So Austin, now when you have all these information and you have a very collaborative environment in there, what are the challenges which you have either faced or have seen the peers facing and how they can overcome that?
Um, I think I started this introduction by first telling you the first big thing that when you're a PhD student is your preliminary exams. I'm kind of right in that one. That's been the always the first topic that even as what's it called? Even when you're visiting the school, that prospective students are always asking about that. So that's a big thing. And but again, this department's very open about being like, here's what I kind of did, or about this is my strategy and stuff like that. Other challenges that I've seen, I think trying to think of other big challenges are we're doing pretty well. I think the one thing that we're having is our type of research is different because we do a lot of like bat work. All in this whole building, it's not just mosquitoes, it's also bats and other stuff. So sometimes, especially after COVID, that kind of gets some backlash. And it kind of makes you feel bad because the community is sometimes against you. And as a scientist, you're thinking, I'm doing this out of good faith. And I know that scientists in the past or have done, like you were saying, have done stuff that they were not supposed to do, and that's the reason you don't trust us. But at the end of the day, we're doing this research because we want to help. We're not doing this for monetary gains. Most of us aren't. Well, most of us aren't. But because if we weren't, we would be in a completely different type of work. We'd be going in an industry. If you're really thinking about money, pharmaceuticals, something like that, that where you know that money is the big thing. And it's not to say that you won't make money here, but that's not our big goal. It happens good when you do good work and you do important research, it eventually comes in. So I think that's been one of the challenges that I'm that community backlash kind of makes you feel bad as a scientist because I'm like I'm putting in my time and work and you guys don't really trust me and it kind of hurts because sometimes you talk to people in the community when you're like on the Uber or whenever and they still you can feel that they don't kind of trust what you're trying to say. Um so I think that's been one of the challenges. That's happened to a lot of us in the school recently.
Absolutely. And this is a very important part when we talk about, you know, community acceptance or, as you say, like avoidance, that when people are not ready to appreciate the amount of effort you are putting in that. And this is one of the barriers which researchers always feel disconnect with. And at Empowering Science Foundation, we believe in breaking the barriers. This is one of the barrier where people don't appreciate enough the researchers, and that is the heart and soul of this series at Researcher Celebrities. We always says that let's celebrate research. And does not matter that at what capacity, in what designation you are doing research, you should be celebrated because every single hour or a minute you have spent for research should be acknowledged and appreciated by the rest of the world. This is a small initiative from Empowering Science Foundation, what we does. But now this brings us to another very important point that when people talk about the mental health of graduate students, mental health of researchers, the burnouts which they feel. And you know, you might or might not have feel any yet, or probably might have multiple burnouts already in this session. But how you overcome, like what is your mechanism to get rejuvenate and that get ready again to perform those experiments?
Yeah, I think mental health is starting to become way more of a open thing, and it's really good that we're talking about mental health. Luckily, when I joined the university, exactly the year that I joined, they made mental health free for everybody. So I started going into therapy, and I was like, why not do it? Because it's useful to talk about. Sometimes I'm talking about my ideas with the people in therapy or stuff like that, and it's good to have a different perspective about stuff. Um, um, I forgot what the second part was. Sorry. You were talking about,
So no, I was talking about the burnout and that how
yeah.
you come out over that because if
Yep.
you have repeated an experiment one time, two time, 10 time and it is not working, that's when these all things build up and then you are at the watch that okay, I think I'm not in the place.
Yeah, yeah. So, and this is gonna sound like I'm in a cave trying to echo, but it's the thing, the big thing that I was talking about is having a safe community. It's having a safe lab. I can go into my PI and kind of tell them I need, and this has been with other graduate students. They're like, I need to back off for a little bit, and she's like, fine, go ahead. The PhD is supposed to be for you. You, I think there's always so much science has turned into trying to be like a machine and just produce and do it efficiently. That's not the point of the PhD. It's so to network, to learn, to do everything. If it takes you longer, it's fine. You just feel like you're obligated to do all this stuff. I know that one of the big things that caveats is funding, so that sometimes pushes you to try to get everything done quickly. But for me, burnout has been something where I've been able to talk to my PI or stuff like that. I mean, like I need to back off, or backed off by myself and had like a couple of days for myself, and she's not like worried about it because I have weekly meetings with her. She's like, okay, that's fine. So that's kind of been my way. I've been able to back off and like have a day where I'm just like do other stuff, go do other stuff outside or something that completely you're not thinking about science and then you come back into it without thinking about science. You sometimes come out with great ideas you didn't think about before, or you talk to people that are not related in science. One of the big things sometimes when you talk about people talk with other people in different departments or people not in science, they sometimes give you an angle you never thought of, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, this is might be a dumb question, or maybe this is a dumb idea." Sometimes those aren't dumb ideas. I just haven't thought about that.
And this is where we say that the tunnel vision comes into play that just because you know the field so much that you are not ready to broaden your horizon and go out of those zones. And that's where the fresh perspectives comes from, because they don't know your field. They are not aware of the limitations which you are. So when
Mhm.
they suggest this, and you are like, okay. And that's how I think most of the brilliant ideas comes from. And again, this is the platform where people start talking about interdisciplinary scientists, like how an astrophysicist is helping a biologist in their experiment. They might sound two different perspectives, but depending on the research question, how everything comes to the same stage and contribute in their capacity to solve a research theory or a question. And this is very important part, one of the things. And the second part is, like, we always have these conversation with researchers in different stages. And one thing which is comes very often, that there has to be a support system. So, Austin, what is your support system for your research?
I think, like I was mentioning before, about being able to talk about your science, not with just people that are in your group, because my support group is, I like having a support group built in science, people that are trying to help me and trying to, I can ask them very specific scientific questions, but I also like that support group that's out of science, where I can go with them and I don't have to worry about talking about science, or I hear a different story or something different. It gives you a nice refreshing. So that's kind of been my support system. I have people that I've been friends with since all the way from since I was in middle school, or sometimes people that when you were going from institution to institution, those graduate students, if you have an amazing lab, they become friends with you for the rest of your life, or people that are in your cohort. So sometimes I'm taking a lot of those from, like for Penn State, I have some group of people, I have a group of people here from my cohort and stuff like that. And I think the other one, the lab feels like is also very much my support system as well. Um, I remember recently I was talking about how troubleshooting again. One of the postdocs was like, you know what? Why don't you just present that for a lab meeting? That can just be a lab meeting. You're just talking about why this isn't working. And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, that's cool. They were like, yeah, it doesn't have to be something specific. That's the point of this lab meeting. So I know that there's people who are just like that are there that are always trying to push me to do good and always are trying to yeah, just make me feel better at what I'm doing.
Absolutely. And I think that's how everyone should work, either in the lab or anywhere where they are working, because everyone needs this support, this faith in you. And this is one of those important, crucial points from both sides, like from student side as well as from the advisor side, that the student should have faith in the advisor that they are in the right hands. And also, the advisor should feel it as a responsibility that the person there is for a training. And if they know everything, then they don't have to be in your lab either as a PhD student or as a postdoc. So you have to understand that they are there for a duration so that they can move to their next stage of their future plans. As Austin already have this clarity that he is doing PhD so that he can prepare himself and make eligible for the jobs he want to do in future. And if the PI is already aware of this, they probably can help or guide him more in a way that, okay, if you want to become this, probably these are the different skill set which you should have apart from what you already proposed or what you are going to do. Because this is how a mentor says or prepares you for your future roles. Also, the role there is one thing that these students are very new, naive. They are not aware of so many things which they have, the quality, the skill set which they have. This is what I feel is the responsibility of a mentor, to identify them, tell them that this is your skill, this is your strength, and also tell them that what are their weaknesses and how they can overcome that, because this is how you build a researcher from scratch. because what we are doing at the end of the day is we are preparing the researcher for the next generation. When we are gone, they are the one who are going to take over the world, and then again doing the same thing because someone has done this to us, and then now it's your role, our role, and everyone's role. So coming to the research question, Austin, when you have this, you spoke about this networking already in here. So now with this technology, you can talk to a researcher anywhere in the world. Okay, with the questions you have, with the interest, or even for the troubleshooting, there are so many portals there where people just say that, okay, this is not working. Can anyone help? Yes, lab is the great place to start with, but using the technology when the entire community come together to help you in there, have you ever considered that part yet?
Yeah, no, I forgot that I've done this before actually. Um, the thing about having this technology is that now the knowledge that everybody has, it widens a lot more. Now you're just not stuck with people in your department and what they know. You can go to any department. So I've talked to a PI and been like, I'm having troubles with this and I want to work with this type of mosquito. And they're like, I actually know somebody that I collaborated in the back with, and then they sent me up an email to talk with somebody that's in Thailand. And so a lot of that has already happened where I've talked to internationally, from department to department. I've had talks with for yeah, sometimes for ideas or troubleshooting sometimes as well. But I think having that area of being able to also just go, one of the big things I was going to say about science is that if you're reading an article and you have a question about that, more than likely the scientist wants to talk about that paper, as long as you're not being disrespectful and you're like, I want to learn more about this, or how did you do this? People want to talk about their science, and we're supposed to be open about our stuff because we want to be able, our research, to build off each other to make way better results. So networking has been really cool. Being able to network internationally is so great. It's so fun because you get some amazing, like I said, it's all about having ideas and different angles to stuff. You think about, they think about stuff they probably did. You're probably doing you want the same result in the same method, or sometimes you're using the same method. Like, the big idea that this is what I needed from A to B, and then you figure out, oh, they tweaked this and that actually made it better. Um, yeah, so stuff like that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also one of those parts when we talk about that how research is a teamwork. As you mentioned that now you are working with internationally, and how collaborating exchange of ideas and everything, because what we are doing is like the foundation was laid and we start building on those. Just as Austin also mentioned that now how a little bit of tweaking here and there, and then you might have your answer then and there. It is just when you are reading someone's paper, and this is a fantastic point, Austin, which you just said that researchers, especially the corresponding authors or the first author, they are so happy if you write to them that, hey, I was following your paper and this is something which I learned to more with the Zoom up. Like there are so many options and they are there to help you. Yes, but another important point which you also mentioned, that you have to be very polite and respectful when you're asking something. It should not pose that you are questioning their research, because then it is a different story. Then you might or might not even get a response from there. So this brings us to another phase of researchers or the skill set, which they say that researchers has to have a good communication skill, either written, oral, or because when you're writing a paper and if it is not well understood, the chances of getting it rejected is way more higher. The second, when you are going to present your data in scientific meetings, nationally or internationally, and if you cannot convey your message through the crowd, again, it is a failure. So, if you can suggest something that how your communication skills have helped you where you are, and how like a prospective PhD student should prepare themselves.
Yeah, so uh kind of the way that I've been preparing myself is like anything in life is very much practice. The more that you get practice and the different types of things that you do, the more comfortable you feel about it. I know that a lot of people have are scared of going up there and especially in crowds. The more you do that, the less you start feeling that feeling of like I'm afraid of doing this. And being able to be amazing at your talking, not just writing and also talking about your stuff in a presentation is that I've been getting so many different opportunities where I'm not just presenting to scientists, I'm presenting to people in the community. I'm having a different way. I'm getting different opportunities. Um, it just not it's not all just science related. I've been getting different opportunities and it widens that search of maybe I've never thought about this job and just because I gave this type of presentation, I made a new network with somebody that wasn't I was not expecting, but now I got this other person. Um, and writing, it's funny enough when you were talking about how your PI you should be open at the beginning to talk or your PI should be telling you it's okay for them to be like you're not great at you're we need to work on this a little bit more. When I first did my master's, I'm one of my weakest skills is writing. When we first started, it was a struggle, but with enough talking and trying to work with this together, I've been trying to figure out how to when you write how to make a story, how to kind of the more and it's also with practice, the more that you do these papers, you finally figure out this is the kind of story that's been working out. Maybe this is the way I should lay stuff out. So writing has been something that's very I think is very difficult in well, at least for me. And it's but it's also very crucial because that's the thing that you're doing for that's how you're going to graduate. That's how you do your thesis. You need to write. And that's also the way that you get your name out there by getting publications out. And getting that good story sometimes just you could be putting the same data and you write a different story and it could jump you into a more impactful journal just because of the way that you organize everything. So having those skills are very important. Um, it's like anything in life, like I was saying, it's very much practice. It's trying to do that a lot and trying to expose yourself to a different styles of doing presentations or writing.
So for all the PhD students here, the message from Austin is practice is the key. Either it is your presentation skills or for writing. As many as time you can do that, probably try it, and then there is success for sure. And for the audience here, I'll say that every single researcher who's trying to do a PhD in near future should follow what Austin just mentioned in this conversation. And the people, because one thing which any researcher in their stage will agree with Austin is practice is the key. The more you write, the more you present your data, the more confidence you have, and this builds up on and on and on. Because I know some of the professors at their, like, after 2 or 3 decades of presentation, they still have this presentation, uh, what they call that as
Anxiety?
anxiety. Anxiety. So you are not the only one. You are at just at the perfect stage so that you can kick off that and not ending up being after 3 decades of research and still you are anxious about it. No. So this is the time. Follow what Austin said. For other research, for everyone else, I'll say that if you want to communicate to Austin, you can write it to him. If you want Empowering Science Foundation to put you in touch with our researcher celebrities, we are there to help you. All we need from your side is passion and commitment to research. And what we offer is like all the support which we can through our network or giving you this platform. And with this, we'll say thank you so much, Austin, for sharing the journey and making people feel home that they are not the only one who are going through it. We all are there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I just want to add real quick that since networking is so important, now that you've watched this video, if you're watching this and you feel related to me or any type of things that I've said, I'm now in your network. If you just
Yes.
reach out, you watching this video right now, you're now in my network. You just have to reach out. And yeah, so yeah, it's been fun. It's been real great being able to do this.
Thank you so much, Austin. For all the audience, stay tuned for another episode of Researchers Celebrities.